Many thanks for joining us today. My name is Pauline Mackay and I'm the Housing Mediation Project Development Worker at Strathclyde Mediation Clinic. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today. The purpose is to give you a flavour of the type of mediation that our project can deal with regards to tenant, landlord and letting agent. And between two parties and co-mediators today, we will show you what positive outcomes can be achieved through mediation without going to court or tribunal. I'd like to introduce you to our facilitator today, Charlie Irvin, who is the Director of the Mediation Clinic at Strathclyde University, of which the Housing Project is part of, and I'll pass you over to him in a few minutes. Firstly, let me explain a little about the Mediation Clinic at Strathclyde. The clinic provides a free mediation service in which experienced practitioners work alongside trainee mediators to help people resolve disputes without going to court or tribunal. This was developed in 2011 to allow our postgraduate students on the LLM MSc Mediation and Conflict Resolution course to gain some practical experience in the field. We then went on to pilot an in-court mediation service at Glasgow Sheriff Court, following on with Paisley, Falkirk and Kilmarnock, and the success of these now means that we deliver our pro bono mediation services to 17 different courts across various sheriffdoms in Scotland. We've been easily able to adapt from face-to-face mediation, Zoom and telephone conference call meetings, and with a settlement rate that sits around the 70% mark, we deal with disputes such as building work, unpaid bills, breach of contract, vehicle-related issues, goods and services and the like. Most disputes in the clinic come from simple procedure through the Sheriff Courts, but anyone can refer themselves or an agency could also approach us. One thing we're unable to undertake through the clinic or through the housing project are neighbour disputes. This would fall under the remit of what we would class as community mediation. Mediators come from all walks of life. They're solicitors, teachers, senior managers, engineers. We've all had a bit of life experience. We currently have 26 active mediators and we're very grateful to them who all provide their time for free. Feedback from parties is extremely positive. And though many reach settlement, even those that don't are grateful for our service and wish that more people were aware of it. Our feedback is that it's taken the stress out of lengthy disagreements, and they felt that they had the opportunity to communicate with the other party in a calm, safe setting. Last year, the clinic was the joint winner of the Community Contribution Award at the Scottish Legal Awards. This was quite significant for us as it demonstrated that the legal sector was beginning to recognise the benefit and the impact of our service. So I'll move on to the Strathclyde Housing Mediation Project. So disputes between landlords and tenants in the private rented sector are always challenging, but during the pandemic, they've been especially fraught. The combination of economic insecurity and heightened anxiety mean that disagreements can escalate into major disputes. And with all of Scotland now in level 2 or lower, this means that evictions can now be enforced across the country. In response, Strathclyde Mediation Clinic has relaunched its housing mediation project for the coming year, and this is funded by Safe Deposit Scotland Charitable Trust. Like the Mediation Clinic, we focus on early intervention. However, this part of our free confidential mediation service is available to mainly private rented sector landlords, tenants and agents across Scotland. Housing Mediation Project offer a cost-effective, efficient, pragmatic alternative to the adversarial approach. Mediation is less damaging to the tenant-landlord relationships than formal action, and the consensual voluntary approach means that agreements are more likely to be fulfilled, reducing the risk of eviction. We're a useful service to know if you're involved in an organisation dealing with those with housing issues, or if you're an advice service. Our settlement rate for the housing cases is currently sitting at 83%. We feel the earlier disputes are dealt with, the more likely they are to be settled. However, mediation can assist at any stage in a dispute. The types of issues that can be addressed through our housing mediation project include communal issues between tenants and landlords, repairs, billings, communication, rent repayments or factoring. Our team is happy to answer any inquiries about any given situation and will signpost when required. So how does our housing mediation work? We offer each party an initial conversation with a mediator who explains what's involved and assesses the suitability of the case. Mediation can be quickly arranged, usually within about 2 to 3 weeks. We have 2 mediators that conduct each session. Their role is to help people communicate effectively, evaluate possible solutions and the consequences. This creates opportunities for the parties to work together to resolve their dispute themselves. All sessions are private and confidential, so nothing said in mediation can be used in court or tribunal. If successful, we can draw up a settlement agreement. If not, regardless, all legal rights are preserved and no one's disadvantaged by attempting mediation. In mediation, the parties are the decision makers. They have a hand in shaping the agreements and they're more likely to arrive at an outcome that suits everyone. In ongoing tenancy, this creates a safe space for tenants and landlords to begin to rebuild a working relationship, whilst also resolving the matter at hand. On average, mediation within the clinic would take about 2.5 to 3 hours. Most cases conclude on the day, but we also have the option of reconvening at a later date if the parties need to consider other information or take further advice. Our clients tell us that neither side wants the stress of the adversarial process. They see little alternative to the courts or the first tier tribunal. And while these options remain available, it means handing over their decision-making power. By attempting mediation first, landlords and tenants get the chance to communicate directly and restore the relationship for the long term. So again, thanks for joining. There is an opportunity for you to post any questions in the Q&A box. And we'll try to answer as many of them as we can during this webinar. So I'll pass you now over to our facilitator, Charlie Irvin, Director of the Mediation Clinic, and he'll explain the structure of the webinar today. Charlie.
Thank you, Pauline, and thank you, everybody. It's a delight that so many of you are able to join us. What we're going to do today is quite an unusual thing. We're going to lift the lid on what mediation actually looks like in the room. I'm sure all of you will have heard the word and perhaps have a fair idea of what it might involve, but it's actually quite rare to get a bird's eye view of mediators at work. And what we're going to do, we're going to run a typical housing dispute of the kind that we've had in the clinic and the kind that we're doing in the housing mediation project. Our mediators, Sandy Sangera and Roy Points, are working together as co-mediators. Just say hi. Hi, Sandy.
Hello.
Hi, Roy. Now, I mean, one interesting thing, it's probably worth pointing out, the pandemic has had some terrible consequences and has made many things more difficult. It has also disrupted some previously held assumptions. One of them, not an assumption, a reality, was about geography. The difficulty of getting everyone together for a meeting. It was always, and I'm sure all of you will understand the difficulty, trickiness. Today, we're actually joined by Roy is in Harrogate, in the country to the south of us, and Sandy is in Montreal. And the clinic has been able to draw on the services, some of our alumni in different parts of the world because of the wonders of Zoom. So that's worth bearing in mind. I'll introduce now our parties. We would call people parties when they come to the mediation clinic. Just before I do that, I should just explain, if somebody is thinking of using the housing mediation project or is referred by the tribunal or it's suggested by an advisor, they can call us, they can email us, and the first thing we'll do is have a conversation with them on the phone. So we're going to assume for today's purposes that Stephen, the landlord, and Alice, the tenant, have already had a brief conversation with the mediation clinic where we would take their details, we'd get a sense of what the dispute is about, and we would explain what's involved in mediation. And they've both agreed that they're going to give it a go and attend on a certain date. So now I'll introduce Stephen, our landlord. How are you?
Hello, Charlie. I'm fine.
Stephen, just maybe in 1 minute, can you just briefly tell us what this dispute is about? And what you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm really surprised. I have been a landlord now for the past decade, I have a number of properties, and I was quite happy, you know, to let Alice and her boyfriend be my new tenants. You know, I had a vacant property, because her brother is like a brother to me. We go back a long time. And obviously I was made aware that there was some damage to a bath, and I didn't see what was all the fuss about, because apparently it was repaired. I did send my my handyman to have a look, and I did believe that it was fixed. And obviously it wasn't explained to me how bad was the damage. And unfortunately, you know, Alice and her boyfriend didn't deal with the issue properly. I mean, they continued using the bath even though there was still some leakage. So I was shocked to see the extent of the damage and the consequential damage, obviously, from the leak. And it's going to cost me in excess of £600, Charlie, to repair this this bath. But the most hurtful thing is these threats, you know, to report me to the safe deposit and to withhold, you know, some of the rental money. I'm really, really upset about it. I never thought that Alice would do such thing. So
okay,
yeah.
Well, thank you, Stephen. I think you've given us a good flavour of what you're approaching mediation, well, what's on your mind coming into mediation. So thank you very much. We'll hand you over to the mediator in just a second. Alice, you've been renting, I think, for a little while. Again, just in a minute, what from your point of view, what's this dispute about?
Well, for me, I've been living there for 2 years with no problems, but there has been a crack in the bath that's continuously got worse. It got to the point where we would use the bath and there was a leak that was coming through to our ceiling. So we did send pictures, and we emailed Stephen to show him how bad the bath actually was, and he advised us due to the pandemic to try and sort it ourselves. So me and my boyfriend did put silicone down, tried to fill up the crack, but it didn't work. So we did send a handyman round, but that didn't work either. So it just basically advised us not to use the bath at all, which is really not a suitable option for us, because we do have nephews coming round 2 nights a week, and they need baths for school, etc. For us, we could turn our shower head in a way that did avoid the crack, but that just wasn't a suitable option for us. I did withhold rent, but it was due to the fact that we weren't getting full use of our property, like we didn't have a bath, which just wasn't great for us.
Okay, thanks very much, Alice. So in just a moment, I'm going to hand Stephen and Alice over to Sandy and Roy for the start of a mediation. Now, just to explain the structure, what we'll do is we'll let Sandy and Roy run the mediation for about 10 minutes. And then I'm going to jump in and we'll do something that you can't normally do in a mediation. And we'll just get a quick snapshot of how it's going. We'll maybe ask the parties, we'll maybe ask the mediators. And if you have any questions about the mediation, please use the Q&A and we'll take a look at that. And we might put those questions to the mediators and we might put them to the parties. And then we'll start again. And we'll probably have time for 3 sections of the mediation in the course of this webinar. So that's how it's going to work. As I say, it's an unusual format, but it gives us a glimpse of what mediation actually looks like when it's going on in the room. So without further ado, I'm going to switch my screen off and I'm going to hand over for the first section of the mediation to Sandy and Roy.
So, Stephen and Alice, welcome to this mediation. Sandy and I have had the opportunity to speak with each of you separately, and we talked about the mediation. We talked about it as an alternative to getting things sorted out in a tribunal. It's an opportunity for you to talk to each other and find a solution that works for you. So you're in a good place in being in mediation. The other thing that we would have touched upon, and of course we've all signed now the agreement to mediate, is that we will all hold this meeting confidential. So what we talk about in this meeting, we can explore all sorts of options, but they can't be used anywhere else. I mean, primarily we're thinking about the tribunal. So you'll have your rights to go to tribunal, but we agree just to keep things confidential. Okay, just to remind you of that. Going to hand on to Sandy. She's going to explain a little bit more of what's going on today.
Okay, welcome Alice and Stephen. So in our pre-mediation separately, we explored the platform Zoom and agreed how we would communicate in this forum. So I just want to highlight a few reminders. So if you do cut out, you do have our number, so you can contact us. If you do need to pause or have a comfort break, you can inform us just by letting us know. And could you just turn your phones off or any distractions in the place where you're doing the mediation? And also, we agreed that you will remain in the space where you're mediating alone to honour the confidentiality. And second to that, there was an agreement around the kind of how we would communicate. And I'll just highlight a few things which will allow the mediation to flow a bit more smoothly. So we agreed to listen to each other within this setting and let each person say their piece. And refrain from interrupting. If you do need to talk, just raise your hand, or you could do the raise hand option on the Zoom. And this allows you to both kind of speak freely as well if you're able to listen. And we as mediators may interject at points to facilitate the process forward or clarify certain points. Are you okay with that, or do you need to clarify any questions? Yep. Okay, thank you very much.
Fine. Fine,
so I'll just pass over back to Roy.
Okay, so let's think about our agenda for today. What's going to be important for you guys to talk about in order to get to a solution here today? So I'll go to each of you in turn, and it will be good to hear what you need to talk about, what you would like to achieve in this mediation. We'll summarise that for whoever speaks first, and then we'll hear whoever speaks second. That puts our agenda together for the day, and then Sandy and I will support the conversation from there. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Good. So, who would like to speak first?
Don't mind.
So, Alice, are you okay to speak first?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. Away you go.
I think what's important for me is, obviously I would like to continue to have a relationship with Stephen because we were good friends for quite a few years. But I think before that happens, we do need to sort out sort of the financial aspect. It's cost me £200 to try and fix our bath, and obviously that didn't work. Also, I did put a deposit down, which was £800, but I would rather not get that back and still be able to live in the tenancy, because
Alice, a relationship is based on trust. You know,
Stephen,
you didn't trust me with your money.
Stephen, could you just refrain just for a moment, and you will get the chance to speak.
I mean, how could we continue a relationship when
Stephen, just at this moment, I'll just allow Alice to speak, and you're going to get your time to speak. No. So Alice will continue to speak, and Roy will summarise, and then you'll get a full opportunity to speak. You can continue, Alice.
But I think if I was to stay in the tenancy, I would need to have a new bath. I feel like we've tried multiple options trying to fix the bath, and it's just not working. So I would like my £200 trying to fix the bath, and we can move on from the relationship from there.
Okay, thank you, Alice. So let me just try and summarise that. You're saying you want to get the relationship back on track. You want to stay in the property, but before that, in order to get things back on track, you need to sort out some of the financial issues, like the £200 that you've paid for the bath.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Sandy, do you want to take it up with Stephen?
Yes, Stephen, now you have a chance to speak, and you can just speak freely as you wish.
And how can we talk about resuming a relationship when I was the one who trusted them with my property? I mean, I treat her brother is like my brother. I trusted them, trusted her with the rent, to pay the rent every month. The fact that she deducted, you know, £100 each month, it's mistrust. She didn't show me any trust whatsoever with my rent, with her money.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, she continued using the bath with the knowledge that it's causing more damage. As you can see, you know, I'm very, very annoyed. I've never had this issue before with my previous tenants.
Mm-hmm.
I treated her obviously like family, because her brother I consider as family. And withholding money really is it's like hitting me below the belt, if you know what I mean. It's well out of order.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that, Stephen. So it sounds like this situation has really annoyed you, and the actual topic of trust came up a few times, that you felt that you left that trust and that was broken for you in the means of the rent was deducted and that impacted on you, and you feel that you didn't have any kind of bad experiences in the past having tenants, but now this is kind of, this has been imposed.
That's right, that's right. I mean, you can talk to all my previous tenants, the way I treated them.
Okay.
And what makes it worse is that, you know, I know Alice and I know her brother. And to threaten me with taking me to the, what they call those deposit people, you know, the safe deposit people, you know, that makes things worse.
Okay.
This is blackmail.
Okay, so I hear that, like, that didn't work for you to feel you felt threatened at one point. And moving forward, Stephen, what are you hoping to achieve from this mediation?
I want Alice to explain to me why she didn't trust me. Why did she have to deduct the money? I mean, we're talking about £200 here. I mean, was it 2 months deduction? I mean, I want her to explain to me, who am I to her? Am I a crooked landlord as far as she's concerned?
Okay, so it sounds like you want an explanation from Alice as to why you felt she didn't trust you. And Alice, you would like the money factor resolved in this mediation. And I think
totally fine to explain to Stephen as well. Okay,
and so that, I think that's possible during this mediation to achieve.
Okay, so forgive me, I'm going to jump in from nowhere. So as I said to everybody watching, this is unlike a normal mediation. At this point, the mediators will be in the moment and they'll be making choices. And this is probably one of the interesting first moments in a mediation where the mediators have begun to gather information. They've heard each party at least make an opening explanation. And so what I would like to do, well, I would like to invite at this point to anyone watching to use the Q&A. And I think the question for us is, where ought the mediators to go now? That's always an interesting question. If you were sitting in their seat, what would you want to explore? And I'll look for questions. In the meantime, just while we're gathering those questions, I think I would just like to ask from a very, very quick snapshot from each of the mediators, your own sense of how it's going and where you think you might take it. Roy, will we start with you this time?
For me, we aim to get them settled. We aim to get them to agree on where the conversation might go, and that's starting to crystallize. We might have to ask another question or two to help them structure how they want to go about the mediation, but it's their conversation that we're there to support. I'm very conscious of that.
Okay. Sandy, what's your thinking about it so far?
My thinking is it would be great to work with the money issue. However, I think that may not be possible unless Stephen gets some kind of input as to why the situation occurred. And therefore, I might want to touch on that before I kind of, so Stephen can feel more at ease. Alice already agreed that she would be willing to explain that and then move on that from there.
Thank you. So thanks very much. We've now had a good collection of what I might call housing literate comments, and we'll just, I think we'll share these and then we'll take up the cudgels again, because obviously the mediators will be making these choices in a very, very brief instant. But here's one question, for example, what would you do in each other's positions if the roles were reversed? I guess that's a suggestion of a question that the mediators might pose. What will persuade Stephen to carry out remedial works? So that sounds like quite a pragmatic proposal. Why hasn't the landlord carried out the necessary repair? That's like, to me, sounds like a housing perspective. There may be some duties and obligations around here. So someone perhaps echoing some of your thinking, Sandy, Ed Johnson, explore Alice's deduction versus the cost of repair. Has she actually already had repayment? Restoring trust might be her not having her cake and eating it. Okay, so there's issues about the money and the trust, which thank you for that recognition, and that they're often related. Here's another, why didn't Stephen just fix the bath? He knew it was getting worse, so suitable arrangements could have been made regarding COVID, but it didn't need to get this. So there's another why question. And here's another, the tenant shouldn't have withheld the rent without approval. And the landlord does have an obligation to repair the bath under repairing standards. He doesn't appear to understand this. So there, again, some issues about the regulatory and legal framework under which this is operating. Here's an experienced landlord suggesting he might have acted more speedily. I did quite a detailed thing there about the landlord's responsibilities. A couple of lots more questions actually. Explanation from Alice. Why did the tenant continue to use the bath when it was obvious it was leaking? Quite a lot of why questions. And then somebody's asking, how would the mediators now facilitate the conversation? I'll stop at that. I think that's really useful to give us a snapshot. And I think this is also a good glimpse for all of you who are attendees of what faces the new mediator. Because when you find yourself sitting in the midst of someone else's dispute for the first time, these are the sort of questions I think that do go through our mind. I think without further ado, rather than take up too much of our time, I'm going to hand back to the mediators. We haven't looked inside the brains of our parties. We'll maybe do that at the next stage. But you, like the mediators, have to guess from the way the parties speak and look what they're thinking, and that's the kind of data that mediators have to work with. So we'll stick with that for now. So there's a few interesting tips and ideas for you, Sandy and Roy. I'm going to hand back to you now and bow out.
So I'll just ask Alice, if you could just give some details how this situation escalated.
Well, for me, obviously it was really hard. We didn't have use of our bath for a year, which just wasn't acceptable. We had tried different options, which neither worked. I had sent emails to Stephen, but for me, I just felt like he wasn't listening to me or taking it seriously.
I have sent you my handyman to fix the bath,
which never worked though.
What did you let me know that it never worked? I mean,
yeah,
as far as his report is concerned, he's fixed it, and there was no leakage. And you know, with COVID and so on, you know, it was very, very hard to send the workers around so quickly. But he told me that it was fixed, and that was the end of it.
I think it was fixed. It seemed like it was fine, but it just never lasted very long at all. Mm-hmm. And for us, the main thing is we just need a new bath, and we weren't getting use of a bath, which is like fundamental to have in our property, especially for our nephews. So for us, what we did was withheld £100 from our rent over 2 months. That was £200 because I felt like that was the best way to get through to him, to say, well, we're not paying the full amount of our rent when we're not getting full use of our property.
Okay, so can I just pause you there just for a moment, just to clarify? So you feel escalated because the communication wasn't that clear, and that you wasn't able to really speak to Stephen fully about the situation. So
when she withheld the money, that was the end of it. There was no more communication. That's it.
Sure,
Trust was
Stephen.
broken, as far as I'm concerned.
Just
No
Stephen,
tenant,
just hold back.
did that to me.
Okay,
No
Stephen,
tenant.
just hold back just for a moment. I'm going to get to you. So Alice, I'm just checking with you that a way of communicating was to withhold the rent. So that was £100 per month. And that was your way to communicate, to kind of give the message to Stephen that I'm not getting full use of the property.
Blackmail.
So I'm not giving the...
Blackmail.
Is that correct, Alice?
Yeah, I felt like that was the only way we were really going to get through to him, since we had sent him emails, showed him pictures, and nothing was really, we had not spoke about, he had not mentioned about getting a new bath once. And I think for us, it was just really important. We had also sought legal advice and had been told that if we take it to tribunal, because he hadn't put our deposit in a safe deposit scheme, that we could get 3 times the amount.
Okay.
But we didn't want to go that far either.
Because it was an informal arrangement, because I classed you as family, because your brother pleaded with me, you know, to let you have the property.
Stephen, well, just we're going to come back to you just in a moment. I just want to clarify one point though. So what you're saying, you do understand that you could have gone to tribunal on the basis that Stephen didn't place your deposit in the manner that he was meant to, in the safe deposit, and you were told that you can get 3 times the amount.
That's what you get for helping friends. You know, I charged her £200 less than the going rate.
So Stephen, what I'm hearing from you is you didn't, is that correct, that you didn't do that because it was an informal contract? And
yes, and it was well below the rental for that area, the rental rate for that area. £200 I charge her less than next door.
Okay, so you made an informal choice based on your connection. And Roy, do you want to just come in now?
Just a few thoughts, if I may. I mean, clearly there's another issue that surfaced here that's going to be important, I suspect, for both of you to work through, which is the safekeeping of the deposit. We've noted that. We can come back to that. But we started in this segment of the conversation looking at what went on around the bath, because that clearly, and COVID didn't help, raise problems of communication between you.
Yeah.
And that's history now. Do you need to talk more about that? Is there more that you need to understand of what was going on for each of you? Or can you move forward from that? I mean, it's your choice.
I mean, I'd like Alice to reflect on what she's done. I mean, clearly the flat needs a new bath. I'm going to fork out the money. And I don't want her to be at a loss. But would she admit that she could have gone on, obviously, about these issues in a different way, instead of blackmailing me or threatening me or withholding my money? And that's the upsetting thing.
So, Stephen, you're saying that you will put the bath right, you will repay the money that was spent on doing that, but you're inviting Alice to reflect on whether she could have approached the communication differently. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay. Alice.
I think for me, I didn't want to go through the whole tribunal situation and things. I do still want to live in the property. I do want to have a good relationship with Stephen again. But I do feel that he needs to also take responsibility. I feel that I tried to communicate and explain the situation to him for quite a long time, and that I withheld the rent because I felt as if he wasn't listening to me. So I feel like it was justified in a way because he wasn't understanding where I was coming from. and how
Alice,
bad
how
the
would you feel if
situation
I
was.
charge you the same rental as everybody else? You know, up the rent, £200, same as my other properties. How would you feel about that? I did you a big favor.
Yeah, Stephen, I think that is there something you want to share around around how it escalated or the money situation?
I mean, as I said, to be honest with you, I relied on my handyman who went round, obviously, during COVID and mended the leak, mended the bath. He told me all is well, everything's working.
Mm-hmm.
So I trusted him. I mean, it's someone I used for years for my other properties. I didn't realize the extent of the damage, to be honest with you, because I've not been into the property for a few months.
Stephen, are you saying, had you realised that, you would have responded differently and more promptly?
Of course, who would like, you know, show me a landlord who would know about a leak, and a serious leak, and who wouldn't act fairly quickly to mend it and repair it, and you know, to avoid any more damage to his property. Okay, I know the ceiling has to be repaired now with a new bath, but that's my responsibility. That's my job. I maintain my properties properly.
Okay, I'm just going to pause us there for two reasons. First, because it's nearly another 10 minutes. Secondly, because it strikes me that, and forgive me for butting in, because I'm sure you were just warming up there, that something in that last little section appeared to be slightly different from the flavour of much of the dialogue up until that point. And I'm curious again myself about what the mediators will do with that. And the other reason I'm interrupting now is because a lot more questions are coming in, too many for me to answer. Particularly, I suppose, if I could summarize two things that I'm picking up from our Q&A. One is it's quite a strong wave of thinking about the obligations of a landlord and in relation to repairing standards and in relation to maintaining property in habitable condition and so on, and just the extent to which that is brought in. Now, I might pose that question to you guys as mediators, because there's a very live question for us. Do you think it's your role to bring legal and regulatory information to the attention of unrepresented people? Roy, Sandy.
Thank you for that somewhat warm potato, Charlie. I think there's an aspect of the demonstration this morning that potentially is important but missed, which are the pre-meetings that we would have had with them. And I think there's a sense in which when you're having a pre-meeting with each of the parties, you can deal with these issues in ways that become a lot trickier to maintain your impartiality, your neutrality within the mediation. So I think then, as these things would have surfaced, we would have been saying to Alice, okay, we can't offer you advice. You need to think about your advice. You need to get that advice so that you can come into the mediation in order to make decisions. So I don't entirely take it on. I think that's where it more naturally comes up in the conversation. I don't see it our job as a mediator to ensure that something is compliant with the law. I'm not legally qualified. I wouldn't go there. With this mediation, we are trying to get two parties to have a conversation and work out what's fair in terms of what they will both freely agree to.
Sandy, any thoughts on that issue? Because we may have different points of view.
I think I feel very similarly to Roy. I wouldn't bring it up in a legal manner. I think that in terms of we do need to come back to the point of the money in the safety deposit box and see how they're going to work with that and highlight that. And Roy did say we've parked it, but we're going to come back to it. And I would say that's quite essential.
Thank you for renaming the safe deposit scheme the safety deposit box. I like that. That's much more vivid. I picture them in movies. But some of the comment has been fairly, shall we say, fairly robust around the landlord's failure to comply with his duty to use a safe deposit scheme. So it sounds as if that's a pretty live issue for some of the people observing. So I'm glad to see that that's in your mind. Well, look, I think at this point, I did promise this 30 seconds from Alice and 30 seconds from Stephen. Alice, from your perspective, how's this going, this mediation lark?
I think it's going okay, but I do think Stephen's really wound up. And I think to have good communication, he needs to calm down a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Stephen?
I would like it to have gone on better because Alice doesn't seem to grasp how upset I am at the breakdown in trust between us, and how hurtful that was to me. I would like her to maybe apologize to me for the way she proceeded in withholding the money, and maybe by saying that she could have handled it better, maybe through her brother. If she couldn't communicate with me, maybe her brother, who's a good friend, could have spoke on her behalf.
I'm tempted, I'll almost do it on behalf of the mediators, on behalf of the audience, to ask you, do you think, have you learned of anything you might have done better so far?
Yes, I realized that I should have inspected the property much earlier to see the damage for myself. Maybe I should have given more weight and attention to a subsequent email saying the problem is still not solved. But as you can appreciate, obviously I had 9 other properties, and with COVID and so on, I couldn't visit the property.
Thank you very much. So there we are. We have people who are people, and they have their perspectives. Whether they're in agreement with yours is a different question, and as both mediators have suggested, not necessarily their business. So I think with that, I'm going to hand over for another section. I think what we'll do is we will allow you, in particular, Roy, you had just asked a question, and we don't want to lose sight of this, to which Stephen had responded, I think with what word would I use, an acknowledgement that he might have done things differently. And so would it be sensible to move up, take it forward from that point, and I'll try and get out of the way, and we'll have one more section. You've got the thrust, I think, of what the people are asking. Maybe I should just say one other thing. There's a couple of people who are not focusing on the legal obligations and the legal framework, but are saying something rather different, is why don't you get out of the way and let Stephen and Alice have a chat? So I'll just throw that into the pot. Two very, very different ways of thinking about what mediators might do. But I'll let you guys follow your nose.
Okay, so Stephen, thank you for that acknowledgement that you could and should have handled things differently, and that practical suggestion about paying for the repairs and getting a new bath in, and maybe we can come back to when that will happen and how that will happen. Is there something you're still wanting to hear from Alice?
As I said previously, I would like Alice to reflect that things could have been done better. If she could not communicate with me, as I said, her brother could have relayed the message, and that, you know, blackmail and threats with deposit scheme and so on are not in order in this case, because I treated them as friends, as family, and I will have to put a new bath. There's no doubt about it, and she won't be at a loss. I'm prepared to cover her £200 as long as the rent resumes as normal. As far as I'm concerned, that's the end of the matter, and I can't see my friendship with her brother being affected in any way.
Okay, thanks for sharing that, Stephen. So I hear that you kind of want to hear a little bit more from Alice regarding the reflection and potentially to restore your trust if she continues to live there. What I would suggest at this moment is actually if we switch just to focus on the point of the money. So we just can see how that can potentially be organised and then move forward with the conversation. So Alex, just because you went Stephen first, if we could just hold that space as well and not keep the no interruptions when you're talking. Alice, what would you like in terms of the money? If you can just be very clear about that.
To just be blunt about it, I spent £200 to fix the bath at the start, so I would like that reimbursed. Okay. If I can stay in the property, there's no issue about the deposit or anything like that, but I do think that should be put into a safe deposit scheme. But yeah, just for me, basically, it's just the £200.
Okay, so you would like the £200 back, and the deposit, you believe it should be put in the safety deposit scheme?
Yeah, but the main thing for me is a new bath.
Oh, okay, and the new bath, okay.
Yeah.
So, and you would like to stay in the property?
Yeah. So,
Stephen, in response to that, the £200 that to be repaid, the deposit in the deposit safety scheme, the new bath, and Alice to stay in the property. Would you like to respond to that?
£200 is not an issue. She's already withholding £200 anyway, so
okay,
calls it quits. You know, that's it. So I will waive my rights to the £200 withheld by Alice. As I said previously, I don't want her to lose money. There'll be a new bath in the property. I'll treat her the same as everybody else now. I mean, we will have a formal agreement. With the money in the deposit scheme. That's the way she wants it. And that will be the end of the matter as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so just to clarify that you would see the balance being cleared for the 200 in the sense that, is it that you wouldn't pay, you wouldn't expect Alice to pay the 200 that she owes you, and that would be clear? That's correct. We'll start afresh. Yes. Okay, and would that work for you, Alice?
I think I did withhold the £200 for a good reason, so I wouldn't pay that back.
Yeah, so what I believe, if I can clarify, Stephen would say that you wouldn't pay it back, but then he wouldn't owe you 200, so it would be balanced like that. Is that correct?
I think he does. He should be giving me the £200 because I did pay that out for the bath, and I do think it was valid that I did.
Alex, I don't seem to understand. Okay, you withheld £200 of the rental. Okay, you paid £200 from your own money to repair the bath. I'm not going to ask you for the £200 rental. Okay, so as far as we are concerned, you've been paid off. You're not losing any money.
So how would you like to respond to that, Alice?
Yeah, I feel like maybe he's got a point, but I just do. It's not really what I came here with the intention of. But
well, we can also clarify that point just as we can move on to the others and come back to that.
Yeah, I think that'd be the best idea.
So if I give you your £200, okay, that you lost, are you going to give me back my £200 rental money?
No, because I feel like I was valid in keeping that £200 because I didn't have a bath.
Oh, so, I see. I mean, this is a new thing to me.
So I'm just hearing that Alice withdrew that money on the basis that she didn't use the bath. So Alice, you believe that, like, you would like to have £200 and it be nothing to do with the money that was withheld.
Alice is getting a brand new bath that's going to cost me £600. A brand new bath with the plaster repaired and everything else. Surely
Okay.
you don't expect me to fork out another £200 on top of that.
I think if we definitely do settle that a new bath will be installed soon, then yeah, I feel like we can just call it quits on each 200.
Your
But it would need to be-
your new bath will be installed next week.
Then yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you for that point. And the new bath has been checked. We can go into the details towards the end of the mediation about the money in the safety deposit box. Would you like to?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as I've explained, I'm not a crooked landlord. All my agreements, rental agreements, my 9 other properties are held with the deposit scheme, you know, the safe deposit scheme. This was an exception, as I said. I've explained the reasons. It was below market rate. It was a good friend. So the issue of trust obviously was paramount in this case. But by all means, an agreement will be drawn next week as well for her to sign.
So there's 2 points to that, that the money would be put in the deposit box and there would be a formal agreement that will come. And Alice, how do you feel about that?
I think a lot of issues came from us having an informal agreement. So I think a formal agreement would just sort of settle a lot of issues that I had.
Okay. And then one of the last points was about Alice to stay. Alice, you said that you would like to continue to stay in the property. Stephen, would you like to respond to that?
Could you remind me, Alice, how many months do you have left on the current deal?
4.
4 months.
4 months.
Obviously, we will see how it goes. We'll review that, you know, when at the end of this year.
Okay, I'm going to jump in again. Sorry to butt in. Not least, I think, because we're probably sailing towards the edge of the known universe of the instructions, and we're perhaps having to start making things up. And of course, in real life, people know their own experience and they know their own situation. Thank you again to Stephen and Alice, who I can now say are Farid and Elise, for so faithfully representing the kind of people that we work with. There's been quite a strong thread through the Q&A and actually through the chat as well of the, how can I put this? I think I have to be very blunt, the unreasonableness of Stephen. And so we don't have terribly long. I think what I'd like to do now is come back to the mediators, actually, first of all, and just ask you to reflect on that as a mediation process from your point of view, with a very specific focus on a housing issue. What's your thoughts about how it went and where it wound up?
It seemed to cover what I might have expected to be on that. I kind of try to hold myself back from feeling that one side or another is unreasonable, because that's merely a point of view, and we're here to serve both of them. And really it's just kind of creating a safe space for them to have the conversation. And it goes where they will. If they want to remain in unreasonableness, that's their choice. And fairness is what they will agree to.
Well, can I come back at you? Because I think one of the things I'm picking up from our audience is a number of people saying, well, hang on a minute, you know, calling the safe deposit obligation blackmail is a form of blackmail in its own right, or it's a form of bullying, or it's a form of the use of some emotional realm to deal with a problem. And a couple of people said, actually, Stephen's simply breaking the law. Now, as mediators, I'm curious about, I don't think you're completely strangers to the safe deposit scheme, how to handle that kind of information, which won't be uncommon for mediators to hold when you're playing this role of facilitation role.
Well, again, I suspect that's something that would emerge in the pre-mediation meeting, and you can have that conversation then, and you could say to Stephen, okay, have you checked out that position there? Because while I'm not here to offer you legal advice, you may well find that that is an untenable position.
Okay.
It's your choice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sandy, you've got something to say. And yeah. Can you just confirm for me our time frame? Are we supposed to be finishing at 12 o'clock or? I'm thinking Pauline's here, but I don't want to detain people.
Yeah, we have scheduled it up till 12 o'clock, so if we could kind of finish up round about now.
We'll wrap up. We're going to run a couple of minutes over, but Sandy, I'll just invite you to respond to that, and then I might wrap up.
Well, I feel like echoes some of the major points of Roy, but I want to highlight that I'm not here to advocate for one or the other, and I think by me saying that initially, okay, Stephen should have, and legally should have, put the money in the safety deposit scheme, not box, then he's already the wrong one. And then I feel like as a mediator, I already have my bias. And so I'm working with a certain agenda. So I want to come in as that they both have a right to speak and they both have a right to make a decision. And just to add to that point is that something that I think that was missed, that it didn't really come out, but it was in the kind of briefing, that we're not actually too sure how the bath broke. And if we had more time, we would have been able to explore that. And then who's right, who's wrong. Yeah. And my point is, I never want to be in that space as a mediator.
Thank you. One question that came up, and I think this is really important for those watching, is that in our live mediation, where this would last probably 3 hours, or perhaps longer, or perhaps less, the mediators have got the option of using breakout rooms. And that's another device, Roy, you mentioned the pre-mediation, but even if something comes up that's novel in the mediation, you can more or less have the same kind of conversation where in private, you might explore something like with Stephen, the lack of use of the safe deposit scheme without necessarily him losing face, without you appearing to side with Alice. And mediators will use those private sessions. So you've had a snapshot. There are lots of questions. Can I invite those who have an interest in this to email me or email the clinic if any questions or thoughts came out of this? Thank you for your comments, which we will take account of. Roy, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to touch upon one thing that I would have got to right at the end of that mediation. We were nicely rounding out all the financial sums, the safe deposit scheme, the new agreement, how long, all of that was good. But I think I might have wanted to go back and say, look, there was a communication failure that got you into this position. Would you like the opportunity to reflect on how your communication could be better in the future? How do you want to communicate with each other? And I think that's an aspect of just interpersonal relationships, which is very well handled within mediation, which arguably going to a tribunal or someone who's going to adjudicate who's right or wrong, it takes away those opportunities. And I think that's what I would have liked to have offered to them at the end.
Okay, Luke, thank you so much. I'm sorry we've run out of time. I think you're getting a glimpse, everybody, that in real mediation, time goes like that. And it's quite astonishing how quickly 2 or 3 hours can go. There's something quite intense about it. It covers a lot of ground. We've shown you a mediation, maybe deliberately, and because so few of our mediators are housing specialists. By and large, most of our mediators are generalists, and they're bringing some knowledge and information about housing And you'll have seen a caution on our part about being advice givers. It's the same dilemma. Some of our mediators are solicitors, and when they're doing small claims, they're not there to give legal advice. And I hope this has given you a glimpse. Thank you, Sandy. I thought just on the safe deposit scheme, it was interesting that Sandy simply courteously invited at the end, what about the safe deposit scheme? And it turned out that the issue was resolvable by the parties. So sometimes curiosity and polite, courteous questions can do the job rather than telling people what they have to do. Anyway, I think we should draw it to a close for the sake of those who've got other diary appointments. We have recorded all of this. And as I say, please make contact with the clinic. Anything you would like to say in closing, Pauline, or have I said enough? You're muted, as they say.
Yeah, sorry, I could see that coming up there. I do apologise. No, it was just, again, to thank yourself, Charlie, and all the Roy's, Sandy, Elise and Farid for your input today, and for everyone attending. We'll be in touch with everyone with a feedback form, and maybe we can do something similar again sometime soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.